Good morning, everybody. We just had a little bit left to do on our limited government. If you remember, we talked about all the different types of rule of law, that we have rule of law that no one, not even the president or anyone, is above the law. It's equal under the law. And then we took a look at court cases that dealt with unpopular views, the judicial process, the religious practices, access to education, and then we kind of broke everything down in terms of the structure of the government in the Constitution, which again is a form of limited government. And then last week we finished up talking about search warrants, the difference between probable cause and reasonable doubt. Remember, reasonable doubt is a gut feeling, enough to detain you but not enough to arrest you. You have to have probable cause when you're arrested. And we talked about the Terry stop. So at the very bottom of your notes where it says due process, we want to talk a little bit about that for right now. And we want to talk about, so that we can fill in those bottom of the notes, and then we're going to move on to separation of powers, which is another form of limited government. So we said that due process is the process that you have when you're arrested and go on trial and sentencing. Everyone has the right to an attorney. This is guaranteed to you in the Sixth Amendment. We have a couple of court cases that have faced our country in terms of what does it exactly mean to have an attorney. It used to be, up until the 1960s, that you only needed an attorney when it was a felony. You could go to jail for long periods of time, or you were put to death. And there is a man by the name of Gideon who challenged that, and that is in a case called Gideon versus Wainwright. Whoops, let me spell that right. Gideon D. Wainwright. Gideon D. Wainwright is that he was accused of breaking into people's homes and stealing, and he asked for a lawyer in Florida, and they said, no, you only get a lawyer if you're charged with a felony. He was, because of his inability to defend himself, because after all he's not a lawyer, he was found guilty and sent to 10 years in prison. He hand wrote a letter to the Supreme Court saying all people are guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment a right to an attorney. The Supreme Court agreed with him, and because of that agreement, the case went back to Florida, and he had counsel, and he was found not guilty. This is one of the most pivotal cases that has ever gone in front of the Supreme Court, because that's what started public defending and public defenders, and that all people, regardless of income level, have the right to an attorney. You have the right to remain silent, which is found in your Fifth Amendment right. Right on the heels of Gideon versus Wainwright was a case called Miranda versus Arizona. Now, Miranda v. Arizona is a case of where this man was arrested for assault, rape, and quite a few different crimes. However, he did not know that he had the right to remain silent, so he ended up incriminating himself, and therefore he was found guilty. He said that because he did not know what his rights were, that he had the right to remain silent, he spoke when he should have been quiet. Now, before we judge him by our standards today, you have to understand that these cases, both Gideon and Miranda, were both cases in the 1960s. And because they were in the 1960s, what you and I take for granted because of the cop shows that we watch were not clear then. And so Miranda came first, Gideon came first, and then Miranda. And so then Miranda was, his case went back, and his confession was thrown out. He was tried again, and he was found not guilty. However, he was guilty because he eventually ended up committing the same crime again. Some people are worried that, the right that all police officers have to tell their rights to the accused, that loopholes, that there would be people that would be let go that shouldn't have been. And for the most part, these two cases, the right to have an attorney regardless of your income level and the right to know your rights, to be quiet, to have an attorney, and all of that, most people will agree that they have done more good than caused any issues. You have the right to habeas corpus, which means that you cannot be detained or imprisoned without knowing why you're there. A writ is just a document. Habeas corpus means that you need to know what your charges are. So a writ of habeas corpus is basically charge or let go. Okay? By charge or let go means that they can't just throw you in prison for no apparent reason. Okay? And that goes all the way back to 1215. You have freedom from cruel and unusual punishment, which is the 8th Amendment. And that 8th Amendment also talks a lot about excessive bail. Whoops. So it is not just the matter of cruel and unusual punishment. So the question is capital punishment, the death penalty, cruel and unusual punishment? The courts have ruled up to this point that that is a state decision, and they have not fully stepped in and said federally this is what they think from all 50 states. They have come in and said, made different statements about who you can put to death, whether you can put a mentally challenged person to death, whether you can put a child to death. Those cases have been discussed, but the idea of is capital punishment cruel, the courts have kind of left it up to the state. Is the different methods for capital punishment cruel, like if you choose to be hung, or if you choose the electric chair, or if you choose lethal injection. And the courts again have said they are all legal and they're up to the states. One of the final rights that you have as an individual is the right to keep and bear arms. And you have the right to own a weapon, but the government can limit your ownership, and that would be how? Most of you are probably saying that you have to have a permit, you have to have, in California, you have to prove that you have a reason for it, and we've of course been talking about this because of the cases that are in front of the Supreme Court. So that is the end of limited government, and so at this time, if you would have your substitute, who I believe is Mrs. Chadwick, hand out to you the separation of powers, we're going to tackle that for a minute. All right.